so much free from carrying you. Now I'm glad around the sacred road. With the step I take, I feel the rest. Your mercy and love is my saving grace. Chains are broken, finally free. In the shelter of your arms, I find peace. Falling in love with you all over again.
Aisha, fuck up. Stop getting what? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Okay, everybody. Hey. Let me drink something. Trying to get some energy right now. Okay. How's everybody doing? Welcome back, all the lovers that took a time out to be with your loved ones. Hope you guys are doing great. All right. Yeah, we are now on the topic that everybody has been waiting for. We have a full house, so let's get into it. The slave trade from Africa to the Americas between the 1600s and the 1800s. Okay, so, and it's not just to the Americas. I want to re-emphasize that even though the majority of people were sent to the Americas, we had a 0.3 million that was sent to Europe. All right. I don't like to forget that. You see my sweet country? You see my sweet country? It's right here. Sierra Leone. Okay. So from Sierra Leone, some were sent to the West Indies, some were sent to North America, and then from Sierra Leone, some were sent to Europe, the British colony, and Senegal. There were a lot of people taken from Senegal too. So Senegal, Sierra Leone, then Congo. All right, Congo was a huge colony there. Angola, right? The people of Angola. And back then, you wouldn't see the name Nigeria because it was divided into different, they had like various colonies. And in those days, until they came together, you know, Nigeria is very big. It's a huge, you can have like 3 or 4 different countries or more inside of Nigeria. So when some people think every African knows a Nigerian, or doesn't work like that, okay? You can have 4 Belgiums or 5 Belgiums in Nigeria. So anyway, so at that time, Nigeria was divided into different, it wasn't all one, okay? So you wouldn't see, but there were a lot of other regions on this side, okay? Different colonies. I think I'm not quite sure the names though, but they were all on this side. Nigeria colonies were on this side. Okay, so, and Ghana also, there was it was divided because Ghana is also very big. So you had different colonies, like different kingdoms, because Ghana has more of kings, you know, in those days. They still do, I believe. They're still there. Okay, so now they were transported through, this is the Atlantic Ocean, for those who don't know. All right, this is the Atlantic Ocean. and that's where they transported these people. So that's why I always say, um, if they look under the Atlantic Ocean, they will see a lot of our people's remains there. It was terrible because people who died in the ships, they just threw them out out of the boat, to make room. It was that terrible. Okay, now they moved south of North America. So that's why you see most of these plantations were on this side, well, south and east. Okay. So New Orleans, Charleston, Richmond, all the way up to New York. Okay. And then Central Americas also had a couple of people in South America, right, including Brazil. And that's why you see Black people over there. So for those people who just think, oh, I'm Jamaican, I didn't come from Africa. You don't understand. All of you people came from our sweet Africa. All right. It's just that your descendants now, because when they freed us and sent back, only a couple were sent back because they were not getting any money out of that by sending slaves back. So they did a couple of ship trips back to Africa, and obviously they stopped. So the rest of all the other slaves that were left stayed in these places. Okay. And now you have all the Black people that are both in South and North America, all right, even in Europe. We have a lot of, when I was in the UK, there were so many Jamaicans and obviously people from Africa there. In Peckham, I visited the Peckham market and I heard a lot of my people's languages. I was trying to introduce myself to everybody, and my aunt was like, "You don't have to introduce yourself to people here," because whenever I hear, especially when I'm out somewhere and I hear somebody talk pidgin or I hear somebody, I rush to them and start introducing myself. I'm like, I know. And she was like, "You would be doing it forever because there are so many of us here, you know." So what I'm saying is, if you find yourself here, because I have spoken to a couple of Black people, especially remember I told you when I started off here in the US, because my first days were in Silicon Bay area, but when I started off newly, to walk my way up, I started in the factories and in on the production floors, and so I met a lot of people, and I like to talk with people, and I have met a couple, not all, but a couple of Black people that honestly feel that they're not from Africa, like they didn't come from Africa, Mm. And so I'm like, bro, all of you came from Africa, all right, at some point. So, anyways, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. We have 5 million. 5 million here that was sent to Brazil, this Brazil area, Rio de Janeiro. Oh, and I visited Brazil as also, I think it was in either 2009 or something like that. When I visited Brazil, I met so many Black people over there. There were so many Black people. Ah, Lord. And I had a reaction in my eyes. So we were getting ready for the event that I was supposed to be at. And I had some reaction in my eyes. So I went to this, there was this stylist that was helping me. And she was a Black woman. And she gave me something to rub on my eyes like clockwork. It just worked. Like my eyes just started, the redness just left my eyes. My eyes was like white. I'm like, how did you do that? And she said, I'm a Black girl. We have our ways. And I'm like, yes, that is it. We always, my great grandmother, even my grandmother, they knew for everything, they had a leaf or something you could just rub or take, and it will solve every problem. we hardly went to the doctor. We always had, a way of doing it. Solving your issues, and it's gone. And it was almost towards the event, and I was freaking out. I'm like, how can I tell my boss? Because I came with my boss for the trip, and I'm like, oh, how can I tell my boss I can't make it? Because my eyes was like really swollen and red. It was some kind of reaction. I don't know what it was. And they were helping me get ready. And she was like, I got you. You see? So we are everywhere. Black people were everywhere. And we have all the same traits. I'm trying to tell you, because when you see any Black person, it's the same traits. It's the sassiness and everything is in every Black woman. All right. Don't think it's just in American women. No, it's in all of us. Same thing, like our style of dress, like the way we want to, like I would say overdress sometimes. We have that sense of style, and that it's in the Black woman. It's in our DNA. That's how we are, and so don't try to feel like, oh, that's not my people because I was born in America. No, we are the same people. Okay, don't get it twisted. We are the same people, but because we were exposed to a different climate, not just climate, but a different environment, we adapted to that environment and we took on the traits or cultures of other people in our environment. But don't never get it twisted. You're still Black. You're still from Africa. So these were the plantations that they walked on: tobacco, coffee, cotton, sugar, mining, and rice. Okay, and we were pretty much au fait with those products in Africa. We had those farms in Africa, and so we thought this was going to be a walk in the park. We thought this was going to be what we were used to. We didn't know that it was more than that. It was more cynical than that. So between 1650 and 1860, approximately 10 to 15 million, that's a whole population, guys. Okay, and those were just ancestors. And obviously each ancestor had children. Those had children, 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 and children. And that's why we have a whole bunch of Black people now in these other places. Okay, so we were enslaved and were transported from Western Africa to the Americas. Most of us were shipped to the West Indies, Central America, and South America. Okay, these were the places they took us to. And so the transatlantic slave trade lasted until the 19th century before it was abolished. I want to reemphasize that it was a forced transportation of millions of Americans to America, of Africans to America and Europe. And I want to start off with why, because I know that why would answer a lot of questions that Black Americans have. Okay, you are my people. If you notice, most Black American women, if I see them, they will hear me say sis. All right. If I see a Black American man, you will hear me say bro or brother when I feel comfortable to say that. But most times I relate with you because I know you are my people. All right. And I see a lot of traits that are similar to us. Now, why? Because that will help you. Why did our people sell our people? All right. The first thing I would say is the African culture. This will help you a lot. The African culture is more people pleasing It's in our DNA. Now, don't get me wrong. If you come with hostility, you would meet hostility. Okay. That's why in some, maybe some movies you've seen, or in some other instances, you see we were fighting, or we were aggressive to strangers. It's just if you are hostile, or if we notice that you have some pride about you and you just want to think that we are dump, or then we will meet you with the same energy. That's an African. All right. And that's why most times I tell people, yeah, I'm very loving, I'm very kind. uh, Also because of my Christian values, but don't meet me with any hostility, because I still have the African in me. So it's in here. It's in here somewhere. Okay. And it's in every African. All right. And that's one of the reasons why we have been so resilient. All right. I have met a lot of Caucasians, and my ex-husband was one too. They're easily broken. Although, yeah, you have the strong ones, but most Caucasians are easily broken. They don't have that fighting spirit that we do, as much as we do. I've seen it many times. And so with us, yes, we're typically hostile if you meet us with hostility, but the majority of us are very people pleasing. We have that hospitality for strangers. Okay. It's been a curse and it's been a blessing, whichever way you want to see it. But because of that, when the white guy came with all these gifts, all right, the guns, the um whatever he brought, the clothing, the metal goods like pots and pans that we have never seen before, offering it to us, the alcohol, because in Africa we do have alcohol, but it's not as potent or strong. We have the palm wine, and the palm wine, you have to leave it for a while to ferment, and it doesn't get as potent or as strong as vodka or all these spirits, distilled spirits that they were bringing to us. So when we saw that, we were like, oh, these people like us. That's an African. All right. We typically, you can fool us with, I think our love language is gifts. You can fool us with gifts. Okay. And they brought these things, and our chiefs really loved these people because they were nice to us initially. All right. And we are people pleasing. When you do something for us as an African people, we always want to do something back. We always want to say, okay, oh, all right, now how can I help you? What do you need? Okay. And then the proposal came in that, oh, we need people to help us in our plantations, in our farms. That's all you need. Because I got people. One thing our chiefs got is people. All right. They marry about over 30 wives. They have like 700 kids, like Solomon. We have people. And all of us know how to work in farms. That's what we know. So if you come to us and say, oh, I give you all these gifts, can I have a few people to help me in my farm? Oh, sure. I can do it. All right. And that's how it started, guys. Our people pleasing thing. That's how it started. And then in some other cases, it was a trade proposal. And we have that honor, especially as chiefs. There is this integrity that you want to maintain in trade. If I give you my word and I've taken this from you, and I've given you my word, it's like a bond, it's like a contract. As far as the African mind goes, like we like to honor our trade partners, or whatever agreement we have made. So some of it was just because of trade, and we've been doing this trade even among ourselves. All right, for decades. I told you, slavery started way before the slave trade. So it wasn't anything new. Okay. And then I told you about the culture that we had, that of servanthood. All right. Where willingly you have people who would present their kids to the chief and ask that they work for the chief for the rest of their lives. They're fed, they're dressed well, they're taken care of. Okay. So we have that culture of servanthood, and not just for chiefs, people with money, even for people without money. Okay. We can work for you for free. In Africa, we have, especially in Sierra Leone, and I think even in Ghana, in Nigeria, because when I got to the airport, especially in Ghana, you had those people who would come and say, your body, how far, that kind of thing. Like, what are you gonna do for me? Like, I'm willing to help you with your bags. I'm willing to help you get to the car. I'm willing to get you a taxi. But you have to give them something, and it's not, it's just understood. Like, when you do this, they will tell you, I don't want nothing from you, but it's understood that you still have to push and say, hey, here, this $5, here, this $10. That is just, that's just how we work. So even if they tell you, no, don't do it, I don't want anything, you still give them, and then they thank you, they bless you, that's the African thing. So again, that was just us. Like, we're willing to work for free, we're willing to be a servant. I think we learned the hard way, though. Another thing is flattery. I told you they'll come and say, your bobo day. They used to do my husband like that a lot. And my late husband, he was the kindest human being that ever existed. So there had to be a bad guy. So I was the bad guy. I was the bad cop. He was the good cop, because everybody knows Teach, he loves people, and everybody will come and ask him for money and ask him for this and that. And he'll be like, talk to her. And I will be the bad guy to be like, okay, we'll talk to you. We'll see if we can help, And so they have that flattery that they'll come and say, hey, you Bobo Day. Like, try to like hail you like you're like a king or something, just to get something from you. And if they do that to a king, especially to chiefs and kings, they love that. People praising them, people telling them. And then after they've praised, they even had people who that was their job, to praise the king, to praise. They would do it for hours. They would have singers who would just come and play the praises of the king, sing the praises of the chief. And after all of that praise, they want to do something. All right. It's just in them. So they can even offer our people for free. I'm telling you, for free. Go, and sometimes even their wives. They can offer their wives to you. My grandfather, he was like my grandmom's second husband. He when he used to work in the provinces, in like villages, and he would go to the villages, and he said there's a place called Kabbalah, and it's a very cold place in Sierra Leone. It's like a colder region. It's in the north, but not as cold as here. Not as cold as here, but it gets cold up there. And when he gets there, he said in the evening, they will come with this water for him to wash. Like I told you about our hospitality, they'll come with a lot of water for him to come wash, because there's not in those places, in those villages, they don't have like water. Like they have to put water in a bucket, it's hard to explain, but they don't have like a shower, and so they have a place where you can go shower, but there's no running water, so they have to come with a bucket for you. And he said the water will be so cold, and he will just manage to wash because it's outside and it's cold, and the Kabbalah is a cold place. And then when he comes in after washing, he will see a woman. They will put a woman on the bed, like they will give him a woman for the night just to warm him. They will tell you, this is a woman to warm your bed. They will give you for free. And you don't have no commitments. Like you could just lay with her, whatever you need, and leave her there. Like, and he used to joke and say, I probably have a lot of kids in the provinces I don't even know about, because they give you the woman. And he used to just joke and make my grandma a little mad sometimes. Well, jokingly, because we all know that obviously he wouldn't do that, but he always had that joke, like, "Bro, I don't know, maybe I have kids." So he had to go every time. He will have to go tell the chief, "No, I'm fine. I don't need a woman right now. I'm married. I have my woman at home." But obviously, because some of them are Muslims, you can have many women. You can have a lot of women if you want. So again, as I say, it's part of our culture to even offer women to white men, or anybody, any stranger, even not a white man, that they think is coming to develop their town or their village. Okay, so that is also a part of why they sold our people. Another thing would be greed. Most of our leaders, they're greedy. Even now, it happens all the time. Even now, we have leaders that give away our natural resources, because our continent is full of it. Especially in Sierra Leone, we have diamonds, we have gold, and so we have. Ghana is well known for gold, and we will have them give it, even especially in the Ashanti region. It was full of gold. They would hand over, because of greed. They just wanted more. They just wanted more. And then some of it was by force. It was out of fear. These people had guns. They had weapons. All right. And so because of fear, they tend to do whatever the Europeans want. And then even the people could not stand against the chief, because that's our culture. You don't stand against even elders. You don't talk back. You don't say nothing. So if anybody is looking for an explanation why this was done by our people against our people, and that could be one of the reasons, okay? Or a few of the reasons. All right. And during the transatlantic slave trade, European traders exchanged various goods with African chiefs and our local leaders in exchange for enslaved people. All right. Some of these goods are even things that we already have, just to see their level of greed. All right. They gave us clothing. Can you imagine clothing? We have so much textile in Africa. We have all kinds of designs, especially in Mali. We had like the Bamako, which is well known right now, and that was turned around and used for denim clothing and all of that. We have all those textiles, kente in Ghana. Yet we wanted the silk that they were bringing from Europe. Can you imagine that? They brought us pots and pans and metal utensils. When iron ore comes from Africa, they're taking our iron ore and they're bringing in pots and pans. And we love the pots and pans. We love the weapons, guns and gunpowder. That's what we sold our people for. Can you imagine that? Alcohol, because we have drunk the palm wine and it doesn't do much for us. We drink their vodka and we can sleep with all the women, and the rum and the brandy that they give to us, Jack Daniels, and we get drunk and we're like, okay, what do you need? How many women? How many men? And we sold our people. All right. They also brought beads. Beads. Can you imagine? Because back then, that was a form of currency. So it's like coins. It's like money to us. in the African society. So when we saw these beads and some decorative items, it looks expensive. We want it. Tobacco. That was another product that European traders were often using to exchange, and we had tobacco and wheat in Africa, but we still sold our people for these things. Manufactured goods like mirrors, knives. We had spears. We had arrows that we used in hunting, but because they brought knives and it looked fancy, we wanted that. So these goods were exchanged for enslaved people. And these people were transported across the Atlantic Ocean under brutal circumstances. They were forced into labor. I cannot re-emphasize some of the things that happened, but I think it's good for us to go over that just a little bit. All right, because you have seen some of the videos, you know exactly what was going on. But again, what I want us to think about before I start talking about the brutal things that was done to our people, have this in mind, that the chiefs not only thought about these goods and economic goods that were brought in, like the firearms and the alcohol and the luxury items, but they were thinking also about military alliances, because some of these chiefs wanted more territory. They wanted more possession of other lands and everything. It was always about power and overcoming their rivals. Okay, that's what they had in mind. This was a powerful incentive to have a stronger ally that has guns and whatever. They saw this as a political, that they will have political influence and recognition. All right. But I'm pretty sure it was very later on that they got to realize what they were doing to our people. Okay, so the harsh realities that was going on in what was called the Middle Passage, that was the voyage when they were moving from our shores, from here, when they were moving all the way, it was called the Middle Passage. That was harsh. That was a terrible experience. Okay. Remember, some of them came from Senegambia, which is Senegal, and the Gambia. I told you those people have a darker skin. I was there for a couple of months, several times, because my brother was sick. When he was sick, we were looking for more doctors, because in Sierra Leone we only had one psychiatrist there. So I had to, send my brother to the Gambia to get more, because I didn't trust the psychiatrist that was in Sierra Leone, to be plain and frank. He was my dad's friend from the Freemason Lodge. And so I wanted a second opinion, and I sent my brother to the Gambia for a second opinion. It wasn't really good. My aunt was the one taking care of my brother there. So I know the people of Gambia. I've been there. They have their jollof rice. They are the original jollof, like, because they have a whole tribe known as the Wolof tribe. And so they have the original jollof. For those who think jollof comes from Nigeria or Ghana. No. The original jollof comes from Senegambia, from Senegal and Gambia. And they have a way they cook it. Ooh, it was so good. They put the sweet potatoes there too. Ooh, that was the original Wolof jollof rice. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So they took people from there. They took people from Gold Coast, which is modern day Ghana. They took people from Benin, Benin had a whole kingdom. All right. All of these had kingdoms. Back then, it wasn't known for the countries they're known, the names they're known now. All right. They had the kingdom of Congo, Angola, all these places. The Biafra, Nigeria was, I think, the Biafra, which was a combination of Nigeria and Cameroon. All right. And then you had the Mozambique, which was southeast of Africa. All these places, they took us from these places. All right. And they enslaved us. First of all, remember there was some that was taken by force. So it was um, based on warfare, like raids on certain villages, because some would not, sell their people. And so it was conflict upon conflict, and some people snitched, some people, African traders that thought that this could be beneficial. So even if the chiefs did not approve, we had people within our people who wanted to make good from it, who wanted to benefit from it. So they too were selling people. They were rounding up people and giving them as for money. All right. And so some individuals were also already enslaved. They were already servants, or due to debt or because of some punitive measures. If they, in those days, the chief can can hold you for anything, for maybe contempt, or there's a law, some foolish law that you did not listen to, and then you're in, punished by the village, or maybe they wanted you to get married, or you didn't want to get married to someone they want you to get married to, silly things like those. And so those people were also sold off. All right. And so there were other pre-existing slave systems that, they took people for. And so African rulers and merchants, because now I want to include the merchants as well, because it wasn't just the chiefs. There were some merchants who thought this could be a good business, entrepreneurs. You thought, okay, I can get into the slave trade business. And all of them did what they did. And they sold our people to these European and American traders. All right. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of it all, I do want to re-emphasize that Europeans were also involved, from Portugal, from Spain, because now we're only talking about America, but Portugal was involved, Spain, Britain, France, Netherlands, all of them took part in this, okay? But Britain, was the first ones that abolished it. It was inhuman, to say the least. All right. The way they would force people, and the journey across the Atlantic, it was overcrowded many times. There was high mortality rates. People were dying in those ships. There was a lot of diseases. They were poorly kept. Most of them were not fed well. Some not fed at all. They would only feed them when it was time to, showcase them when they got to America. It was terrible. It was hundreds of miles long, brutal. And that was just getting there. It was just to get there into America. And so they had to be confined, first of all, in like forts. If you've been to Ghana, you just go and see the Elmina Castle. You would get chills, honestly. That place it feels haunted to me. They had all those forts where they chained our people. So they were in chains. They were not just taken, like, they were chained, and then they were put in these boats like sardines. When we read it in school, that was what they told us. They were laid like sardines, pretty much. And it was horrific. It was terrible. It was overcrowded. They had poor sanitation. They had insufficient food, insufficient water. Okay. They were loaded into these ships and they were chained. And then they put people on top of other people. It was really inhumane. It was just inhumane, inadequate ventilation, and the mortality rate was recorded at 15 to 20% of all those boats that were going across. 15 to 20% of enslaved Africans died along that passage. And obviously what they do, they dump them back into the water. So when they reached America, they will quarantine them on the ship until it was time for them to be sold. Okay. I did have that picture. I don't know if I still have it. How they would do the auction. Maybe when I'm editing, I will put that picture. But yeah, it was terrible. They would auction our people, and that's why when people were saying, oh, they were just taking the weak people. No, they were taking our strong ones because they had to showcase them. So they had to look strong and they had to look like fit to work. So families were commonly like separated, which is where that family separation started. Individuals were sold to the highest bidder. And these people labored in plantations, they worked in mines, they worked in households. So when people say, yes, this country was built, not just your plantations or your mines, but even your households, your children were built on the backs of my people. All right, African people. And so there was a lot that was done. I don't really want to go into the severity of it all, but just know that the work that was done was inhumane. It was without pay. Many times it was without pay. And for the sugar plantations, they worked in the Caribbeans, in Brazil, labor intensive. All right, very labor intensive outside in the heat. All right, cotton in the cotton plantations was in southern Africa, southern America. So that would have been in the South, okay, the South, where we know where the South is in America. And the tobacco plantations, you had places like Virginia, Maryland, all right. Rice plantations, you had South Carolina. I've been to South Carolina. That's a beautiful place. Georgia. There was also, it was heavily intensive because they had to work outside in the cold. You people have seen Color Purple. That was it. It was terrible. And then in the mines, there was Brazil and Spanish America that we worked in the mines, and domestic work as well. Our people became, household servants, cooks, caregivers, all right, both urban and in rural settings. We also, because of our skills from back in Africa, we became blacksmiths and carpenters without any pay whatsoever. All right, dock workers, construction laborers. We did all of that, and we're still doing that. We're still working in all those industries even to today, shipyards and stuff. But the most part of what I want this message to be about is the exploitation, not just of labor, but of their human rights and their human welfare. Many of our people were raped, our women were raped. Many of our women went through inhumane treatments. They were whipped. A lot of men were whipped. Um, we all know the stories. We all know the stories. That was hanged. Some of them were hanged on a tree. That was not cool at all, to say the least. That was terrible. That was the worst form of slavery ever. And so what kept us through those times was our faith. And that's where I'm ending this today. That's where I'm heading. Our faith. And because I have been through, times when I thought I couldn't go through life anymore, which is why my music is so important. And I know in the African culture, many people look at me like, oh, you're an engineer, why are you into music? And a lot of people don't really get my music thing and my faith thing. Like, what is this all about? You could just be an engineer and make money, and so why are you doing all of this? But I know my faith and music was what got me through a lot of the things that I went through personally. If you read my book, you'll know about those things, those challenges and those trials. So I know what it feels like to go through stuff, and your music and your faith is pulling you through. Okay, these songs hold like a deep connection with Christianity. And that was reflected in not just the songs, but the resilience of how these people used to sing these songs in those plantations, on day in, day out, on hard days, on cold days, on hot days, and so if Black Americans want to relate to the gods of your ancestors, then the gods of your ancestors was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was the true one living God. And we can see that from your deep rooted traditions. Okay. And not just the songs, but even in some of the things you do regularly. And for many older Black women and men, you notice that their faith was in God. They would always, you would always hear songs, stories about a grandma that was always in church, a grandma that was always praying and in interceding and talking about biblical values and morals. Okay, so that shows that your freedom, your salvation, your freedom was based on your salvation. It was rooted in your salvation. That was the reason why a lot of these justice was corrected, and the injustice was reversed. And so I just implore you that even with the music, we have given up that music, and now you notice that Black American songs is full of either violence or mixed with the the industry witchcraft new age thing that they're doing right now, that some of us have been pushed aside because obviously we cannot sing those kinds of lyrics. um and now all that is seen about Black music is this twerking and sex, and that's all we sell now. But our music originated from, especially the a cappella, the beautiful instruments, the banjo that came from Africa, from Mali, and all of that was rooted in our faith in God. Gospel was rooted in our faith in God. Many of our singers right now that are famous, all right, name any singer that is famous in America that did not come from the church, a Black singer. All of them came from the church. All of them started off in the church. All of them have mothers that were rooted in God. I was, because I'm a fan of Whitney Houston. I was looking at some of her movies, and I saw even the Clark sisters. All of them had mothers in the church. They also started in the church. So why is it that we have a lot of people that who are Black Americans that are now turning their back away from God? Like, what is this? And now you're blaming Christianity? You're turning your back from God and then blaming Christianity? No. I know that the Black church has failed a lot of Christians in the Black church because we allowed the devil to come in, and I think it's just a generational thing. It's because we have a lot of generational trauma, as a result of this same slavery, because of all the things that were done to our people during the slave trade. And so things like sexual sins, it's a spirit. All right, it's a spirit, and and that's why if you've been through any of these trauma, it's not just therapy is good, but you need deliverance too. Okay, it's not been said, but I will say it, because there's a spirit that transfers. All right. So if we see any of these things showing up in the Black church, and I'm speaking more to my Black people, obviously it's showing up in all other cultures, but especially I'm speaking to my Black people because it's been very, like, in recent times, it's been showing up in public, and we all see what's going on, pedophilia and all of that. It's as a result of our past as a Black people. And so we need to not just talk about things, but pray about it, intercede, and ask for deliverance from God to help us as a people, and not just pointing fingers. That's why most of the time I don't like, yes, talk about the sin, but don't point fingers on people, because eventually it becomes witch hunt or whatever, because it's not just those people practicing those things. It's deep rooted in our system, and there are people, just because you have not been outed doesn't mean you're fine. No, you too, you need deliverance too. Right? So back to what I was saying, many of the people that fought for the abolishment of the slave trade, people like Frederick Douglass, and I'll put up some of it. I don't have it right now, but I'll find some pictures. People like Frederick Douglass, who was a prominent abolitionist in the United States, his oratory skills and his writings were based on the Bible, on the Word of God. And he was also a slave. He was an escaped slave himself. All right. We had people like William Garrison, these liberators, even Harriet Stowe, all of these people, their background was, religion, all right, in God. All right. We have evangelicals and Methodists, especially in Britain, that pushed for the abolition of slavery. William Wilberforce, I told you before, in 1807, was the one that officially got the slave trade abolished. Granville Sharp, also in Britain, he was involved in legal cases that challenged slavery in England, and he co-founded societies that effected the abolition of slave trade. All right, Harriet Tubman, we all know her. She was an escaped slave, and she became the leading figure when it came to the Underground Railroad. We see that all of them, they pushed for the abolition, and all of them, it was rooted in Christian values. All right, it was rooted in Christian values. And so I am imploring you, as a Christ, as a race, all right, and not just people here in America, but even in Africa, let us not turn our backs from the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I keep saying the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because some people want you to serve another God, all right, from another link. All right. And that link is not, just because they call him the Black Jesus or the Black whatever, that doesn't make it him your leader or your God. Okay. So again, as I said, William Wilberforce had deep Christian faith. John Wesley, he was the founder of the Methodist Church. Okay, all those hymns and everything. He was also a strong advocate for the abolition of the slave trade. All right, Granville Sharp that I told you about, he was a Christian. Thomas Clarkson, he was also very significant in the abolition of the Slave Trade Act. The in the writing of the Slave Trade Act, and in 1807, and he collected evidences and testimonies about the horrific things that were done in the slave trade, right, with our babies, with our kids, and with it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. So even with all of that, I want you to know that it was all based on God. All right. Several other Christian leaders, before I leave, we have Dr. Martin Luther King. I love him so much. We went in Washington. There's this whole edifice that has his stuff, his statue and everything. I love him so much. He was a Baptist minister, okay? And he was very, very vocal about his strong stance for civil rights and his famous speech, I Have a Dream, all right? So all of these people, it was rooted in Christian beliefs. Desmond Tutu, I'm not going to forget my South African people, because if we talk about racism, South Africa is where it all started. In fact, that's the hub of racism, all right? To very recently, all right, Desmond Tutu died in 2021, all right? And Desmond Tutu was an Anglican bishop, all right? And he was very outspoken about the apartheid. Apartheid was the white people taking over Black people's lands. All right. So when now the narrative is being turned in some other way, no, the white people were the people who went into the Black community and were oppressing the Black people in their own community. Okay, in West Africa, they won't try it because we had our independence. Okay, we fought for it. Okay, so they won't try it in West because they know the Western African, In South Africa, it was terrible. It was terrible. And obviously, my South African people, they love God. They serve God. You hear even from their songs, when a South African, some of my songs, I also incorporate the South African vibe into it because it's rich. It's beautiful. So and it's rooted in God. You feel it even in their songs. Ralph Abernathy, he was a Baptist minister. He worked with Dr. Martin Luther King. We had a lot of other people there. John Lewis. John Lewis, he died recently in 2020. He was a US congressman. He was also an ordained Baptist minister. All right. He fought for civil rights as well. Dorothy Day, she was a Catholic. So all of these people that fought for civil rights, especially churches that were involved, like the AME Church, these were all Christians. The AME Church was very significant when, especially during the segregation period. All right. It had Richard Allen was the first bishop. Okay. And this was based in freed African slaves. All right. There was also the first African Baptist church in Savannah, Georgia in 1777. That was also they played a key, like the Underground Railroad, and in helping enslaved people find their freedom. All right. We had churches like the AME Church, Zion Church in New York City. They were, leaders of the Sojourner Truth that helped also with activism and abolishment of the slave trade. We also have the Bethel Church, Methodist Church. We had several, the St. Augustine church, that's a Catholic church. All right. So all of these, they pushed for racial diversity, like the St. Augustine in Louisiana. It was founded in a community that included freed slaves, all right, and helped our freed slaves. And let us not forget, here in Tulsa, we have our AME Church, the Vernon AME Church, that stood even during the Tulsa Race Massacre. All right. And Black Wall Street was what it was because of the Christian community. Now, you cannot even forget about that. You cannot push the fact that the Greenwood community flourished at that time because of the African Methodist Church that was around, helping people with their spiritual guidance, helping with community support, helping to host certain civic events and social events, helping with education and things like that. So the Black church has been, I know now we're bashing the Black church, we're coming against it, we're saying all these things, but the Black church was very instrumental. Say what you will, it was very instrumental in our freedom. All right. And so today, if they're trying to destroy our leaders and trying to discredit our leaders, we should not be a part of it. All right. Again, I say talk about the sin, because obviously the sin is wrong. Whatever sin it is, sexual sins of any type is wrong. All right. Let's talk about it. But don't bring our leaders to the ground in public so everyone can see. Remember when David sinned, Prophet Nathan had to go meet him and talk to him. All right. He didn't publicize it all over the place, And so I strongly believe that our leaders need to be rebuked, but in private, not on the TV and on all these platforms, except of obviously if it's a court thing, and they've been indicted. Let the legal people handle it. But as a people, let us pray for them. If you can't pray for them, it's fine. But let's talk about the sin. Let's make sure that people who are hiding also feel convicted about the sin, because the sin is the issue. We want people to repent. We don't want examples. All right. We want people to repent. And so I believe that should be our focus. All right. And so the transatlantic slave trade was abolished in Britain in 1807, in the United States in 1808. But then obviously there were some illegal, you know, trades that was going on. But slavery persisted, all right, even in the US, until 1865, all right, before it was totally abolished. In Caribbeans in 1833, in Latin America in 1804, and all of that. I think later on it was official in 1888. So, because of all of this abolition, we were there were some slaves that were sent to back to Africa, which I told you settled in a place called Freetown, and that's where I come from. That's our capital city. And then there were so many others that were, they call it a repatriation, that were sent back to other places in Africa. And so you would notice that in some tribes in Africa, because when we got back, we formed our own tribes. We formed our own, because there were already indigenous people living there. So when we got back, we decided to form our own colonies and our own tribes, like in Liberia, also in Sierra Leone, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Congo. We formed our own because we had our own languages, which was Creole for Sierra Leone. We had the Creole language, which is like a pidgin English, all right? Also in Nigeria, we have the pidgin English, even though many people still associate with their original ethnic groups like the Yorubas or the Igbos, but then you had the ones who spoke pidgin. And then if you look at our last names, we had slave names. Okay. And I have heard so many people, like, when they know that I speak with my African dialect, they're expecting my name to be, hard to pronounce. And then they realize that I have a name that is more, and they're wondering, is this your, yeah, that's the name. So we had names like Cole, we have names like Williams and James and Johnson. All these names are typical slave trade names. Okay. My dad's name was Elliot. And so all of these names were our slave masters' names, okay, for the Creole tribe. And we settled in Sierra Leone. All right. I'll give some more pictures when I'm editing. Yeah, because I was rushing to join. I had a couple of things happening today. But yeah, so that was essentially what happened in the 18th century. We were the freed slaves that settled in Sierra Leone, for example. And that's where I come in. All right, that's where I come in, because my people were because my great grandmother was she knew Yoruba. She was speaking in Yoruba, and I know a lot of Sierra Leoneans, especially Creoles, who have Yoruba background. We even call our kids Yoruba names. All right, like Ibironke. My son is Oluwatoyin. My husband's name, because he's from a different tribe, but his tribe was also part of freed slaves, So we do have background with Nigeria, because I told you, they just grabbed all of us from everywhere. And that's why we should not fight each other, even as Africans, because they grabbed us from all these places. And then when they took us back, they didn't have time to like say, oh, you are from Nigeria, so let me take you back to Nigeria. No, they just dumped us back. So some of us originally were Yorubas. Okay, especially like my late husband's family, some of them actually speak or have names that are kind of Yoruba, and even my people, the Creoles, they have Yoruba names. And so we hailed from different places in Africa, and then they just dumped us back wherever they took us, And so if you notice, even our foods, we eat similar foods, we have similar traditions and things like that. So it's we're the same people. We're the same people, and that's why we shouldn't be fighting each other. We shouldn't be hating on each other, because we're the same people. All right. And the Jamaicans too. The Jamaicans, most of people that were sent back to Sierra Leone do have Jamaican blood or background or similar things, because some people came from Jamaica that were some illegal slave ships that were captured that were from Jamaica. They brought them to Sierra Leone. From Nova Scotia, they brought them to Sierra Leone. So we have a mix of everything. And that's why even in Creole, you hear some words that they sound kind of like French. Some words sound kind of like English. Even in Liberia is the same thing. So a small percentage of the African diaspora, we are repatriated slaves. We came back, and that's why my culture is very unique in a way, because we are not from the indigenous Timini or Limba or Loko or Mende tribes that is typical to Sierra Leone. All right, we are the descendants of settlers, of slaves that were sent back, and we're called the Creole people. And we developed our own distinct language and cultural traditions. Same thing as, the resettled slaves in America. When you guys formed your own groups, you had your own distinct culture, which is a mix of all the different experiences, including your African background, and now your learned experience in the US. And so there was so much that was done after the abolition, which kind of separated us in a way, in a sense. All right. And that is what the divide is right now. So we should not allow that to separate us. Okay. In terms of education and influence, Freetown, my city, became like the center for education. That's why you see it's being highlighted here. Sierra Leone is shown in big all by itself here, because many people were coming to Sierra Leone for education. All right, in the institution where I graduated my first degree in, called Forbay College in 1827. That's where that was the hub. It was founded in 1827. It was the first university in West Africa, in that area, and people were coming over there to go to school. All right. So for some of you who were asking, do West Africa have colleges or universities? Yes, that one was founded in 1827. Okay. So Sierra Leone's role for resettled freed slaves was it played a critical chapter in history. And that's where, if you see me involved in certain things, it's because I know where I'm coming from. All right. But our next episode, we will start talking now about the white man's religion. But I want to close this. So the black man's religion is full of diverse gods because of all what we've been through. All right. We have been through several, the Islam, we have Islamic introductions, we have the Christian introductions, we have our own indigenous traditional religions that I told you we thought that God was too big, so we went through stones and things that we saw as too huge and beyond our understanding. We worship those things, all right? But we always believed in a supreme being. So that's the black man's religion. So if you want to say, oh, because some people are saying Christianity was a black man's religion, some people are saying Christianity was a white man's religion. No, if you want to talk about the black man's religion, that is the black man's religion, a supreme being and several gods. And you don't want to worship several gods. You want to worship the supreme being. So instead of worshiping the gods of your ancestors, worship the God of your ancestors. The one that saved us from slavery, the one that keeps the black people. All right, that is the God you want to serve, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, because if you want to serve the black American God, the black man's religion, full of spirits. All right, we believe in ancestor worship too. We worship ancestors, people that are already dead, and you want to worship them. Like, come on now. Come on now. Why would you want to worship when you can worship the God that is alive? Okay. We have rituals. If you want to worship black man's religion, that's black man's religion. Rituals and rites and the killing of animals, the killing of kids. Yes, I said that. The killing of kids. That's a black man's ritual. Sacrifices of many kinds for power, for fame. Does it work? Yes, it does. I told you it does work, but it's short-lived. We always say something in Creole like they die. That means if you use, because most of these voodoo and whatever, they use leaves and stuff to do the concoction and whatever. All these things, they die, they perish. Okay? Divination is an African thing. And that's why I'm not surprised when you people see some prophets and they tell you tomorrow you're gonna get this, you're gonna get that. This happened to you yesterday. This is your phone number. Divination is in the African traditional religion. So not all prophets move me, quite frankly, because we know what happens in Africa. We know. All right. So you gotta be careful. Who are you serving? Who are you really serving? Because if it's black man's religion, we've got divination over there. We got shamans and medicine men and women. It doesn't last, and there is curses that comes after it, that is attached to it. If it's black man's religion, it is not God. We believe in a supreme being, but we have all these other gods. We have all these other things, and there's so many influences. Christianity, Islam, and that's why it can be confusing. And if you just want to go what your ancestors worship, there's a lot of confusion because it's a fusion of everything. That's why you need to go back to the Bible to see the essence of what Christianity really is, because if it's by our traditions, is a mix of everything. All right, is a mix of all these other influences that we had. Remember, we were transported to a whole new land and we took our own. And with time, we probably forgot about some of our stuff. And now we've mixed it with new stuff that we found in where we were. So don't be fooled. Don't start mistaking things. All right? Especially now that we have this new age religion where we have all these mix of Buddhism and Hinduism all mixed into Christianity now. They call it the New Age spirituality, and some people are saying I'm not Christian, I'm spiritual. That's another topic. All right, but we have now mixed it into Christianity, but it was never there. That is why it's time for us to go back to the Bible and understand what the Bible really says. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the recording right now so we can talk, me and my people here. But essentially, that's what I want to leave with you. Next episode, we're going to talk about the white man's religion, because that is another myth. That's another thing that people are confusing for Christianity. The white man's religion is not Christianity. I'll tell you what it is next episode. Love y'all. Bye.